Welcome to Tentative Title with Tim. This is a podcast about creativity, about process, about filmmaking, and about screenwriting. Welcome everybody back to the podcast. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're being creative. You're doing the things you want to do. You're telling the stories you want to tell. And when you're listening to this, I hope that's your life at this point. So what I wanted to talk about today was something that I'm trying to kind of define for myself, because I think that the rules have changed when it comes to this particular issue. And that is determining lazy writing. And the reason why I say that is because when I was growing up, like back in my day, when you went to go see a movie, there was this expectation that the movie was going to teach you everything you needed to know in order to have a fulfilling experience. And that meant teaching you about the characters, teaching you about the world, just giving you the information you needed so that by the end of the movie, you could walk away and feel like you had a fulfilling experience, that you went on a journey, that you were able to follow characters to a conclusion that made sense. And that was great because you could just walk up to any movie theater, throw down your money for a ticket, and you didn't have to know anything about the movie. You didn't have to read any supplemental material. You didn't have to read a comic book or a novel. You could if you wanted to. There were plenty of movies that came out that were based on novels, and so if that was your thing, you could do that. But it wasn't important. You could go into a movie blind and still get the plot, get the characters, get the overall theme, and walk away, just having enjoyed yourself. But nowadays it's a different kind of situation. There was this, and I don't know if this term has been thrown around like lately, but at least back when I was in film school, there was this new thing called transmedia. And at the time, I was like, I have no idea what that is. You're like, well, what is this? And it was essentially telling a story over multiple pieces of media. So you would have one story that you would tell through novels, through comic books, through podcast, through film, through television shows. Like you were telling one story through these many different formats. And at the time, I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, you could have a story go on for forever. You could tell so many different, from like many different perspectives of, and you could focus on, side characters, and you could do all this stuff. Like, it just seemed like this never-ending, world-building kind of, approach to storytelling. And that at the time, like I said, I was really, really excited about that. I didn't know if I could do that myself. I really wanted to focus on films, and I still really want to focus on film. That I love that way of telling stories. But I think that has it's still permeating. It's still in the way in which stories are being told, or in ways that I think they're being kind of marketed, because sometimes, like, especially now, I'm gonna focus on Star Wars again, on the Book of Boba Fett, because that has been the most. I don't want to say it was like. It's just been a very frustrating show, if I can be honest. It's very frustrating, because there's so much that is put into it, and you can tell that they're referencing other things, and they're kind of like they're just packing it in with like so many different like references to other like shows, to like the comic book or to a novel. And I watch it, and some of it I can enjoy because I know exactly what it is they're doing. I know why they're telling the story they're telling, why they're putting certain elements in there. But there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, and I don't plan on reading the comic books. I don't plan on like watching some of the shows, because it's just like I just don't care, or like I don't feel like I have time or like the interest in going on that journey. And so I think that I'm kind of one of those people, like like many of us, who are just gonna approach some of these shows and have no idea why certain characters are showing up, what certain references mean, and so it ends up not being that fulfilling because I don't get it. I don't get the entire weight of what's happening, or why people are showing up, or why characters are showing up. And yeah, it got me thinking. I'm like, well, I don't think we ever really had much of a problem before of telling just one story, and not just telling one story, but like taking the package of a TV show and saying, okay, this show is about this one thing. Yes, it's connected to other things in this universe, but it's about this one thing, this one character, this one issue, this one event. Like, it's only about that. And with this current show, and it seems that way also with the Marvel shows as well. I'm not, I'm not picking on Star Wars, only, but it seems like they're putting in a bunch of other things into these shows, for one, so that they can, I guess, pay it off in a future thing, which is like what they're known to do, is just set something up somewhere, and then with the expectation that it's going to pay off someplace else. And on the one hand, I used to think that was pretty brilliant. And in a way it is, because the audience is going to keep showing up because they want to know the answer. They want to know why something happened, and so they're going to keep showing up. So from a business perspective, it is kind of genius to have that approach to storytelling, because the story never ends, and then it just, the audience has to keep showing up in order to get more answers. But it's really frustrating when the writing becomes, in effect, lazy. And that's why I'm having trouble with defining what lazy writing is, because of the fact that, after I watch an episode of something, of a Marvel show or a Star Wars show, I automatically go to YouTube and I try to find people who know way more about, what's going on in the shows than I do. And I listen to them talk about what everything means, like what all the Easter eggs are, and all this kind of stuff. And sure, I come away from those videos having a deeper understanding of what was happening in the episodes. But, I often think, well, what if I didn't have this? What if I wasn't following all the other background stories for these shows? Like, I would be lost. I would be so frustrated if I was only going off of just watching the shows and not following up anyplace else. I would be so frustrated. And I have been really frustrated. And that's why I'm like, well, is it because we're still in this mode of transmedia where they're trying to tell stories through different, in different ways, using different formats? Or is it that the writers themselves are lazy, and they they know that they can put something into a show and not have to pay it off, not have to explain it, because they can just kick it down the road, or they can say, well, writer A is not going to solve this problem, so we're going to give it to writer B, who's going to write a comic book that's going to fill in all the blanks. And I don't think that's a great way of telling a story. Like, I wonder if, the popularity of some of these things are waning because of the fact that people are just confused, or they're just like, this world seems like too much of a commitment, so I'm just not going to tune in anymore, because now they expect me to read a comic book, now they expect me to read a novel, now they expect me to watch so-and-so movie before I understand what's happening in so-and-so show. And it's just, I don't know if I can define this as lazy writing, but there have been plenty of instances where I've watched some of these shows and I'm like, there was a better way in which you could have told this story. And I'm not saying that I'm that I'm as skilled a writer as I would like to be, but I know I have my own instincts about story. I know when a story intrigues me. I know when I feel like I'm being hooked in to what's happening, and that I guess I could put at the foot of of the writers, and just kind of like, you did not do enough to not cater to, but enough to give the audience the information they needed if they were coming into the show blind, not having any idea what was going on. You're not giving anything for the audience to kind of to hook them in, to feel like they are on the journey that they should be on. And that's really kind of like that. I mean, I miss I miss watching movies in which you know nothing about what's going on, and then the storytelling has to be complete enough that you go on that journey. You feel what the characters are going through. You're following the plot closely because you have to, because that's the only thing that you can rely upon in order to understand what's happening in the story. And like I said, I'm getting on Star Wars and Marvel, and they're a completely different beast when it comes to storytelling, and they've had decades upon decades of stories and of ways of connecting things, and a universe that's been ever expanding. And okay, that maybe they're not the best examples of lazy writing, but I also think that since they're so big, since there's such a vast and ever expanding universe, that you should be able to check in at any point in the story and understand what's happening. And if you can't do that, then I don't think they're doing I don't think their storytelling is that great. Like I said, because of the fact that, with the Book of Boba Fett, it's like, yes, there's a lot of references, there's a lot of callbacks to other movies and shows, and that's great. And, fans of that universe are going to be very excited about it, and they are. But if you sat somebody down who never heard of what Star Wars was, and they, came in to watch this show, would they at least understand who the character of Boba Fett is? And, to be fair, they are fleshing out the character. They are doing a lot of things with that character, especially at the beginning, that you kind of get a sense of, his journey. And that's great, and I hope it pays off this coming week. So, I don't know, but there are also episodes that kind of turn their focus away. and we learn nothing about Boba Fett. We don't even get to, like, I'm trying as hard as I can not to give away any spoilers because, there's plenty of people who haven't seen it. But at this moment, if you were to sit somebody down, and you'd say, hey, watch this current episode of the Book of Boba Fett, they would kind of look at you and say, why wasn't this called something else? And, that's a problem. That's a really big problem. But I can see how they're trying to, I guess, branch off, or they're like, well, we need to put other things into the show so that we can, we can kind of like pay it off later on future shows or in some other media, but we need to put it in now so that it's there so that we can pay it off later. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? Just keep your focus on the one thing. It's supposed to be about Boba Fett. Keep it focused on Boba Fett. It's not that complicated. But, I don't work at Lucasfilm. I'm not in the writer's room. I have no influence over what happens there. And, there are plenty of things that happen behind the scenes that can compromise a show because it's a creative endeavor. There's so many things that can go wrong when you're trying to make something, and all the time, like, maybe it's not even lazy writing that's happening. It's that something happened with the production. COVID was a big factor for a lot of these productions, and they had to change the if they were in production, they would have to change mid-production, and probably had to rewrite some scenes or some like some episodes, or like things got delayed. So I mean, I don't want to say that it's all lazy writing, because there are plenty of scenarios where maybe the script that they went into production with was brilliant and was very tight and had a lot of was completely about this one character, and they went into production, they're like, this is going to be great, and then just one problem after another kept happening, and then they were like, well, crap, we need to we need to do something with the show. Okay, let's go back into the writer's room. We got to fix this, or we need to change that, or we need to we need to figure out how we can still get our episodes done, but now they're a complete mess because of all the problems happening behind the scenes. Who knows? And so that's why I'm like, oh, but I also kind of I suspect that their attitude on storytelling is one where they can just throw stuff out there and just basically just have it in the show, and then say, oh yeah, we're gonna pay it off later. We're not exactly sure when, but it's gonna be in a future thing. It'll be in a future thing. Just have faith that it'll pay off in a future thing. And I have to say, I hate that. I hate it so much, because I want to come out of these shows feeling like there was an arc, just a complete arc where we found the characters at one place, we went through how many different episodes, and then by the time we got out, there was this arc. I felt I went on a journey with these characters, but we don't actually get that, and we barely get that in a lot of mainstream stuff. Mainstream stuff. So, okay, I'm talking about TV shows, completely different monster. Movies have a better track record, I have to say, because you never know if you're going to get a sequel, and you never know what is going to actually, come about from the movie that you're making. And so more often than not, the first movie that you get ends up being a complete movie. You end up, you're introduced to the characters that are important. You're introduced to the world that they live in. You're introduced to the conflict, and then you get to go on that journey, and that's great. and more often than not, you get a complete story. Where you run into problems, though, is that if there are sequels, and especially if there's planned to be more than one sequel, which seems to happen like more often than not nowadays, is that, you know, there will be a moderate success or a perceived success, and then the day it comes out, they will announce 2 or 3 sequels to that film. And, you know, a lot of it is marketing. I get it. Like they will release a statement saying that, you know, they're gonna this movie is so popular, it's so successful, it's raked in so much money that we're gonna have like 2 or 3 sequels, and it's really just a story that they put out there to get the general public to, kind of feel like, wow, if I don't get on the bandwagon now, if I don't get on the ground floor and watch this movie, then I'm not going to understand what's going to happen in these sequels when they come out. So I better go out and see it, or I better stream it, or whatever. And that also is like one of those ploys that is just it's really, they just do it too often. Like there's just not to say that every announcement of of a sequel is false. You know, I'm sure there's great intention to start going into production on on a sequel, because they are expecting it to be some kind of successful franchise. But you could go into the past trades and see announcements for movies for sequels for movies that are never going to see the light of day. And it's a nice trick to play if that's what they're doing, but it just turns into it's marketing. It's all marketing. So. But when you go into a sequel, and they're setting up that they don't have to actually have any answers, or that they can kind of kick the can down the road in terms of actually giving any substantial like answers to the story. I mean, it happens. Like sometimes we're just you get to the end of a sequel, and you're like, well, that's great and all, but you really didn't give us any answers. In fact, you gave us more questions so that it will show up for the next sequel that is supposed to come out, and that's not great either. And that could be defined as lazy writing, because they really didn't wrap it all up, and they gave you more questions when all you wanted to do was see a nice sequel that you could walk away and say, wow, that was a great I'm glad they added this this to this story, that fulfilled my desire to have more of these characters, but it really all depends on which which franchises are out there, and if it was considered to be a money grab, or if it was an actual they thought there was more story there that they needed to tell. But it's more often than not, it's a combination of both. Like they thought they had more story, and they were like, well, the first one was a big success, so let's try to get let's try to push another one out there so that we can get more money. And that happens more often than it probably should. So how do we define lazy writing? Do you have an answer? Have I given you any kind of insight into this? Because I think you can you can really kind of see it when it seems like you're not getting any answers as an audience. And it's not because they're trying to have some big mystery, but it's because the writers themselves didn't really know exactly where they were writing towards, and they didn't actually know what it was, what kind of story they were trying to tell. And so they just kind of start throwing things in that are references to other movies, or are like copycats of more successful movies. And that happens all the time too. You get one successful movie, especially if it's like a sleeper hit, and then you get multiple copycats that come out around the same time, or in the years following. You'll see like all these copycat like movies come out, and it's like, oh, somebody just thought that this could be like a cash grab, and all they had to do was just say, oh yeah, it's the same kind of story, and it's just come out and see it, pay your money and come out and see it, because it's like this other movie that was really successful, and they're usually they aren't as successful because they're copycats. But you can see lazy writing. You can feel it when you're sitting there watching and you're like, something seems off about this. There's a question that I have as I'm watching this, and I'm not getting any answers, or the characters don't seem to be acting in a way that makes any sense. It seems like they're being forced to do stuff as characters, or they're making decisions that don't really move the plot forward or reveal anything about themselves. And it just feels hollow and wooden, and like there's nothing there. And a way that we can kind of fix that as creative people is I think we can take ourselves out of being what's the word I'm looking for? But instead of being passive as writers and allowing our characters to be passive, we need to put our characters in the midst of the danger, in the midst, put them in the lion's den, put them in the scenario where usually you wouldn't put them in, because then that allows them to be active. That allows them to have to make choices and to make sacrifices, and to really find their way out of it. That they have to use their own personalities and their smarts, what they know, to actually get out of that scenario. And how we do that as well is that we show those characters having to deal with the same kind of situations early on in the film or in the show, and have them either fail so that they learn how to get out of it later, or you have them being good at it, but then when you give them a challenge later on, it's the same thing, but it's even bigger than what they expected. And that can be a challenge as well. That's good, connecting what the characters do at the beginning and what they have to do at the end. Now that's really tight writing. That's really a way in which you can keep the audience engaged, because they are on the edge of their seat with your characters. They are wondering if if your audience can kind of put themselves in the shoes of the character and think, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I would get out of this. How is this character going to get out of it? If you can give them a point where they're they themselves have no idea how everything is going to be resolved, then that is a great place to be. And you can tighten up your writing. You can, if you're a filmmaker, you can tighten up your scenes with editing. You can set things up that you pay off. And when you're looking at the cut of your movie, or if you're reading your script and you're just you feel like there's a complete journey that's happened, then you've done your job. If you're watching it and you forget that you cut this thing together, and you're just following the journey of the characters, and you yourself forget what is supposed to happen, you've done a good job. If you completely forget that you were involved in the project and you're just following the journey, you're just following the adventure of the characters, you've done a really good job. And I think that's the goal for all of us, is yeah, you know, anybody can write a script. Not anybody can write a really great script. And how do we write great scripts? We put things in there that are going to pay off. We put things in there that the characters grow from. You know, we find ways in which, like, we can bring the world around the character and have them have to react in real time to what's going on. And that's really exciting. And that makes it so that, like, that you're not a passive viewer when you're watching it. Like, you're active, you're engaged, like you want to know what happens next, because even if you've seen the movie 100 times, like, you'll still be able to come back to it and just be on that ride with them. And I think that's the point. Like, and this could be like a drama. I'm not talking about just action films. I'm talking about, like, just anything that engages you as a viewer. Like, it could be a romantic comedy. It could be, like, a dry drama. But if you're engaged with what's happening with the characters, like, that is how you know that you're not, doing lazy writing. And if you find yourself reading something that you wrote and you're just glazing over, like, maybe it's lazy writing. I mean, it could be that you've read that script like 50 times and you're over it and you don't want to see the script ever again. That's fine. Put it away. Like, if you can, if you're not on a deadline, put it away and then come back to it with fresh eyes. And if you feel yourself going on a journey with the characters that you created and the scenario you created, then you've done a good job. And find a director, find somebody who wants to make that film, because if you're excited about reading it, somebody else is going to be excited about reading it, and they're going to want to make it. And we want to see that film. We want to see that whatever you made, whatever you wrote, like, be created and go out into the world, because that's a great story. And I mean, like, there's so much that we can do that actually doesn't require much work, if that makes any sense. I think we kind of get caught up in like certain things that we have to have in our scripts, or certain, like, I don't want to talk about like representation. I don't want to talk about all these things, because if your story is about a certain culture, let it be about that culture. It's fine. Just let it be about that culture. You don't have to force things into that story. And that's fine. It's going to be its own thing. It's going to be about that one thing. And it's still going to be intriguing if it's good writing. It'll still have universal themes. It'll still have characters that everybody can connect with. It'll be in that story. But to have to kind of, force things into your script, it's going to make it so that it's hard to read. It's going to make it a hard watch if you've already filmed it and you're, like, in the editing room and you're just like, well, I mean, I was trying to put this in here, and then there was this other thing that we had to put in here, and there was this other thing. Like, that doesn't make the story. It doesn't bring the story out. It doesn't make for a pleasurable view. So, like, as much as possible, focus on the story. Focus on what's important to the story. And by doing that, you're already going to be getting the bare minimum of what a lot of creative people, like, don't, because they're focused on so many external things that they feel like they have to put into their story. And you don't have to do that. You just have to focus on what the story is about, who the characters are, and make sure that they have problems that they need to overcome. And it sounds so easy, and I'm kind of rolling my eyes at myself right now, because I'm like, well, yeah, if it's so easy, Tim, then why don't you do that? Why haven't you written like 100 scripts by now? Why haven't you, like, filmed a bunch of films by now? And it's like, oh yeah, because it actually really is hard. It's really a difficult thing to do, but it is possible, and want to kind of strip away all the nonsense of what the story is not, you find the story. Like, I think it was Michelangelo, where the quote was, he was looking at a block of marble, and somebody said, "Well, how are you going to determine how are you going to sculpt this?" And he was like, "Well, I'm going to chip away everything from this that is not the sculpture." And it's so easy to take that advice, and it's like, but if you get down to it, it's so true. When you go through your story, you kind of know what doesn't belong there. You know, like, how to tighten things up. You know how to connect things. And so when you go through your script, and even if there's a scene that you absolutely love, it's like the best writing you've ever done. Like, if they gave Oscars for like a single scene, this would be the scene that you wrote. But if it doesn't belong in your film, you got to cut it. You got to take it out. It doesn't belong. And you might be able to use that scene someplace else in another project. But if it doesn't belong in the current thing that you're working on, cut it out. And don't feel bad about it. Just cut it. And cut and cut and cut until you have the essentials of the story you were trying to tell. And so I think that's how we kind of get to, like, at least for us on the very independent stage, to not fall into lazy writing, to make sure that what we create, because I mean, I don't want to say that we're in competition with the big guys, but in a way we kind of are. I mean, they have all the resources, they have all the money, and we're just the small guys. We're the small ones who have almost nothing, or we have very little. And so if we can tell stories that are stronger than the mainstream, then the mainstream, if they find our work, will want us to be a part of the mainstream. And if we can maintain our discipline to create very tightly constructed stories, then you will essentially kind of bring the mainstream back from the brink of absurdity, essentially. And I mean, not to say that like there are things out there that aren't written brilliantly and aren't shot brilliantly. Like there's a lot of it, and you can be a part of that of those shows and those movies, by just honing that craft and making sure that the stories you're telling are about the characters and about the scenario, and are tightly constructed. And that's how you do it. Now, I got to take my own advice, and I got to do the same thing. I got to make sure that what I do is what I preach. And so, this is a challenge for me as well, to try to take the same kind of advice, and every single time I approach a project to think, how is this lazy writing? And if it is lazy writing, how do I fix it? And how do I make it more engaging? How do I make this come alive? And then I think, my writing will be better, my filmmaking will be better, and it takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes a lot of failure. So there we go. All right, this is this was a longer one than I had expected, but I gotta say, I really think that I've grown over the years to be able to, like, I guess, pontificate on certain subjects. And if you want to hear me talk more about these things, or I have a live stream that I've started to do every Tuesday at 4:00 Pacific time, and it's on the YouTube channel. So Tentative Title with Tim YouTube channel. You can subscribe there and hit the bell. And I have some live streams set up there that you can set a reminder, and then you can talk to me in real time. You can send me questions. I'll have the chat open, and if you have any questions, we can talk about it, and especially if you have any questions about any of my past episodes, we can talk there. And I'd love to kind of engage with everybody. This podcast seems to be one-sided. Nobody really, you kind of listen to it, and then you can either decide to engage with the links that I have in the notes, or you can just kind of walk away and be on with your day, and just wait for the next one to drop. So, but as always, thank you for showing up and listening, and especially for listening to such a long episode. I hope I gave you some food for thought, some things to kind of inspire you, because it's tough out there. It's tough to be a creative person. There's a lot of loneliness sometimes. There's a lot of doubt and insecurity that props up, and we're all just trying to make our stuff. And even if a lot of if not a lot of people end up seeing it, it's still important. So somebody out there will see it, and you'll inspire other people just by the simple fact of taking a chance. Because a lot of people out there, you have no idea how many people want to do creative work and they never do because they are so afraid. They're petrified of being judged or of not being good. There are so many people, but you can be one of the brave ones. You can be one of the ones who says, I may not be as good as I want to be at this moment, but I'm going to keep chomping at the bit. I will get better. I will keep practicing, and eventually I will make something that I can be proud of. I can make something that can be put out into the world that other people can see, and it could live on for hundreds of years beyond you. You never know. It's the internet. The internet is forever. So your work, if you put it online, is going to be there for a while, and somebody is going to come across it, and it's going to inspire somebody. So never doubt that you have talent that people want to see. So, all right, guys, that's all I got for today. Hopefully I'll see you on the Tuesday live stream, but if not, I will talk to you on the next one. If you'd like to connect with me, there is an email for the podcast. It's tentative.title.with.tim.podcast@gmail.com. There's also a Twitter account. The handle is @title_Tim. There's also a Facebook page where you can post questions, or you can connect with me there. Thank you guys for listening. I'll talk to you on the next one.